back down and shut your trap. It's time for
Keeping It Sports with M3.
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Well, I'll need some beer.
Are you ready?
You have to ask me nicely.
Come on now, don't be bashful.
Are you ready? Are you ready for
Place for the best sports talk and news surrounding each league.
I can prove it with my usual flawless logic.
Hey man, this time I'm gonna do it my way.
What's your name again?
And now, here's your host, M3, Mike Rosansky. Coming to you from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. It's time for Keeping It Sports with M3, powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everything's going well for you here on this Tuesday, the 6th day of December in 2022. You know, we've entered that time just about 3 weeks away from the big day. Of course, I'm talking about Christmas, if you happen to celebrate that holiday. Now, I don't really get offended this time of year when I hear people say Happy Holidays rather than Merry Christmas, because, hey, you never know what the person that you're saying it to celebrates, what they believe in. So, to each their own. But this is the time of the year where we both want to give the best for our loved ones and hope for something nice under the tree for ourselves, especially if you're a sports fan. Now, sports fans salivate, look forward to the free agent frenzy to begin in every sport. But it doesn't seem like it's any more so than in baseball, because in the other sports, everything happens almost immediately. Those are salary cap sports. The big guys, they're going to get their money, but they want to make sure they get it right away. Otherwise, those options may not be available to them if they sit around and wait and take days and weeks. Usually you're seeing guys make a decision within the first 36 to 48 hours of the beginning of free agency in the NFL, NBA, and the NHL, mostly because there's that whole legalized tampering period, which to me does not make sense. But in Major League Baseball, things are more drawn out. And you're usually waiting from the time the World Series ends at the end of October, beginning of November, till around this point in the calendar, the first or second week of December, to see the big names start to drop. See the big moves start to happen. Now, you've seen some movement already. There's been a lot of reliever action. What was it, the Mets re-signing Diaz, the Astros re-signing Rafael Montero, how they even made a big signing last week in adding former All-Star Jose Abreu as their new first baseman. By and large part, the biggest free agents are still out there. We're still waiting on Aaron Judge. We're still waiting on some of these top starting pitchers. Although one made his decision right before the start of the weekend. And it's led to a lot of debate, a lot of discussion, a lot of opinions in this area. But I think what was the fear and the just honest belief of most New York Met fans came true over the last 72 hours. As late Friday night, it was Jeff Passan to break the news that Jacob deGrom is leaving the New York Mets to sign with the Texas Rangers for 5 years, $185 million, with a 6-year option that can bring it up to $222 million. Now, the AVA, the AAV, is not what I'm surprised about. I figured it was going to be in the high 30s, hell, maybe even $40 million for an average annual salary for Jacob deGrom. He's been one of the best pitchers, if not the best pitcher in baseball for the last 6 or 7 years now. But I'm stunned about the number of years that he got when you consider the recent injury history that he has had. I mean, you take 2020 out of the mix here, where he only made 12 or 13 starts. Everybody only made that amount because it was a pandemic shortened season, a season that we've never seen before and hopefully we'll never see again. But then there cropped up the injury issues in 2021 where he didn't pitch past July. Then you had this season where he got hurt in his first spring training start and we didn't see him until after the trade deadline. So it left a lot of wondering, is he still going to opt out of his contract with all of these problems, being the fact that he's a 32-year-old pitcher and still had 2 years guaranteed left on the contract. If he didn't opt out, well, he decided to opt out and take the huge payday. And that's what this is about to me. This move does not feel like it is about winning, because the Texas Rangers won 68 games last year. And this is coming off of a off season in which they were amongst the biggest spenders in the sport. They spent north of $100 million for Trevor Siemian. They went out there and threw a 10-year contract at Corey Seager. They spent big on the middle of their infield. Now they're spending big on their pitching, which has always been suspect and a large reason of why they have not been part of the conversation as far as contention goes in Major League Baseball for about 8 or 9 years now. Ever since Ron Washington led them to back-to-back World Series, they had slowly and surely faded out of any contention conversation and were kind of a doormat to most teams in Major League Baseball. So they spent the big bucks showing that they are serious about wanting Jacob deGrom to be on their team and wanting to improve their pitching. And, I can't blame them because he is a great pitcher. But that contract, the law of averages show you that contract is going to look hideous in the next couple of years. It's going to look really bad when you have a guy, as he's getting older, who's had these health problems, who has not changed up his pitching style one bit. He's still going out there trying to throw the baseball 100 miles an hour on every fastball, throwing his slider north of 90 miles an hour, essentially being a two-pitch guy. And that, along with probably the pandemic shortened season, is a lot of the reason why we've been dealing with all of these injury issues over the last couple of years. And take into account that he's not the biggest guy in the world. And he's taller than me, but he probably weighs about the same. And the human body can only take so much. There's only so many times you can go out there, throw your fastball 100 miles an hour before your body looks at you and says, no, I can't handle this. I can't do this. I am not physically capable of doing anything more. And listen, today's a day for Met fans where you're disappointed. You're heartbroken. And it's very understandable. Even if you were the whole time, you had this idea in the back of your mind that, oh, deGrom's not coming back. He's leaving. The fact that he keeps talking about his opt-out even while he was on the IL during this year, being that tone deaf, he was clearly showing the signs that he did not want to be a New York Met anymore. Even if you're of that mindset, there's no way that this cannot hurt you emotionally today, because this was your guy. This was, we all, as baseball fans, draw ourselves to the homegrown guy more so than the free agent or the guy that was traded for it. The core four won 5 World Series together. Bernie Williams won 4 World Series with that group. But they get a love and an infatuation and appreciation a level above the likes of Paul O'Neill, Tino Martinez, even if you want to throw Scott Brosius or David Wells or David Cohn in the mix there, because those were homegrown guys. They came through the system. They were either drafted or scouted out of different countries by the Yankees front office. So, we, as Yankee fans, I know myself, we hold our love and gratitude for Jeter, Mo, Pettit, Posada, and Bernie closer than we do anybody else that was on the teams from 96 through 2009. That's why, the fans were so hard on Alex Rodriguez when he came here, not just because of his quirky personality and big contract, but because he wasn't our guy. It took a long time for us to warm up to him, and I still think to a varying degree, probably really didn't by in large part love Alex Rodriguez. And for Met fans, that same thing applies. Yeah, you're happy that you got Max Scherzer in free agency last year. He's going to be a Hall of Famer at some point whenever his career ends. But he's not your guy. He came from the Nationals. He came up with the Diamondbacks. Hell, the Mets were his 5th different team in his career. Jacob deGrom was a guy that they drafted, developed. Hell, he wasn't even a highly touted prospect, but he just came out of nowhere in 2014, never stopped pitching well, even despite all the poor run support that the Mets gave him from the day he came to the majors till the last day he threw a pitch for them. And was beloved by Met fans all along the way. Remember that group of young pitchers that came along? Harvey, Syndergaard, Zach Wheeler, and deGrom. Well, he was the last man standing amongst them. He turned out to be the best amongst them, although Wheeler is having pretty good success in his own right in Philadelphia. You just hoped, if you were a Met fan, that he would be the forever Met. He would be the guy that is here his entire career, finally helps lead you get over that hurdle that you never got over with Mike Piazza, albeit he wasn't a homegrown Met, that you never got over with David Wright. And that is a Hall of Fame level player leading us to a World Series. So this stings today if you're a Met fan. You probably saw this coming for the last 5 or 6 months, but it doesn't it doesn't take away any of the heartbreak. Hell, I could just tell you by my own emotions. I'm not a Met fan, but I'm disappointed today because I've always made this loud and clear. I've never understood why there's this idea of a Mets-Yankees rivalry, why there's this idea of these two fan bases that are so obsessed, especially on the Mets side of things, with being the team of the town. The only they play the Subway Series every summer, but other than that, the only possible time that could decide that is the World Series. So I've never understood why there's that rivalry there, but for some reason amongst some of the mostly younger members of the fan base, that does exist. But as a Yankee fan, I could tell you, unless the Yankees are playing the Mets, I don't root against the Mets. I don't hate the Mets. There are certain players I disliked along the way, such as Matt Harvey or Jose Reyes or Francisco Rodriguez. But by and large part, I wish them well. And when over the years, on nights deGrom was pitching, I'd have the Yankees on my TV. But on my iPad here, where I can watch TV on one of the apps, I'd have SMY on and watch Jacob deGrom. That was appointment viewing for me. And I'm disappointed now that once every 5 days, I'm not going to get to see every start of one of the best pitchers of this last decade. A pitcher that, despite his poor run support from his team, was putting on a Hall of Fame level pace with the Mets that you were hoping, if you were a Met fan, would finish his career as a Met. And you could talk about saying that you saw the second greatest pitcher in the history of the Mets franchise. And he was never going to catch Seaver as far as greatness, but he would have surpassed Doc Gooden if he would have been a lifetime Met. And now that's not going to happen. And I can also speak as a fan, essentially him taking all this money, because the Mets offered him a good deal. They offered him 3 years for $20 million. More money per year, but less total money. It stings in the fact that he's essentially saying he doesn't want to be here. And I know that in the next 72 hours, in all likelihood at the winter meetings, Aaron Judge is going to make a decision on his future. And if it's not with the New York Yankees, I'm going to feel disappointed, feel heartbroken, feel, annoyed, feel like, hey, we let one of the best players ever developed in our franchise's history just walk out the door. So, it's a tough day if you're a Met fan. Now, if you're the Mets organization, you got to quickly pick up the pieces because there is things to do this offseason. You still got to figure out center field, whether it's re-signing Brandon Nimmo or not. And then you look at that pitching staff pretty much from your ace Max Scherzer to then your closer Edwin Diaz. Every spot in the middle is wide open. Every spot in the middle, you got to fill 4 spots in the rotation and at least 5 or 6 spots in that bullpen. There's only so many spots in there that you can fill from within without falling off your hoped trajectory of being a World Series contender this coming season. So it sucks. It's an annoying day, not just for Met fans, but I think, if we're being honest, all of New York sports fans. And while I wish Jacob deGrom well, the Mets were wise not to match that offer. Texas Rangers, at some point during that contract, are going to be regretting that contract. And Met fans, you have every right to be feeling sad, hurt, and betrayed today. Not by the organization, but by one of your guys who you had hoped would be finally your forever Met that got in the Hall of Fame. All right, a lot left to get to for the next about 40 minutes or so here. Give you some thoughts on all of the football that went down this weekend, including a disappointing Sunday afternoon for the team yours truly roots for, the Jets. Kind of a weird Sunday for the Giants, as well as some quarterback injuries who are truly the contenders in especially the NFC now. Talk about some comments made by LeBron James, the college football. So a lot to get to. We're going to try and fit it all in here. And I just hope you just sit back, relax. Hell, put your feet up if you have a table in front of you to do so. And please, continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
This weekend was kind of a double whammy for the, should I say, traditional sports fans in this area. And what I mean by when I say a traditional sports fan in the tri-state area is most Met fans are Jet fans, most Yankee fans are Giant fans. Well, I'm starting to see as I go along in this crazy thing called life, a lot more crossover, a lot more Met fans that are Giants fans and Yankee fans that are Jets fans. But if you are that traditional fan, you go from the disappointment and the heartbreak of losing Jacob deGrom as a free agent on Friday night to a disappointing loss by the Jets on Sunday afternoon. And I'm not one to be in the idea of moral victories. I'm not one of these that likes to sit there and be like, yeah, you know what? We competed hard. Yesterday's loss by the Jets annoyed me. It bothered me a little bit. And I wasn't so much annoyed at any one given player, because if Zach Wilson was the quarterback of this team yesterday, the Jets would have never been competitive. The Jets probably would have laid an egg in the second half and would have got blown out by the Minnesota Vikings, who, to be honest, did nothing spectacular offensively yesterday. And the Jet defense did a pretty good job for the most part of containing Justin Jefferson. You knew he was going to get his at some point, but it just turned out that the one time that they did not have Sauce guarding him on the right side there, he was able to burn Reed for a touchdown. But this game, it came down to really the Jets not being able to take advantage of red zone opportunities. Even with as slow their offense got off to a start of, Mike White had this team in position to win the game in the end. Hell, they had plenty of opportunities in the second half to score, to come down and put up touchdowns, but they kept settling for field goal after field goal. They had all 6 drives in the second half were red zone opportunities. That they had 3rd and 7 at the Minnesota 18, settle for a 36-yard field goal by Zuerlein. Then you got 1st and goal at the 6-yard line, but that gets pushed back because there was an illegal block by George Font that, to me, that play was not truly his fault. I think the blame there has to go on Berrios, who decided to cut outside rather than spin and go inside. And, Font the purpose was to make the block on the outside defender, but the defender, because of Barrios' spin, had his back to Font rather than facing him straight up. So that kind of hurt. Had to settle for another field goal there. Then you get that crazy 60-yard catch and run by Garrett Wilson, in which he barely tiptoes out of bounds in the red zone. And of course, the Jets have to settle for a third straight field goal drive. And all this while their defense had pretty much locked down this game. I mean, the Vikings had put up 20 against the Jet defense in the first half, got 2 rushing touchdowns by Cook and Madison. But in the second half, the Jets really pinned their ears back and were shutting the Vikings down outside of one drive. And that one drive turned out to be the difference maker here, with the fact that this offense just stalled each time in the red zone. Like, other than the one time, Mike White got the quarterback sneak. And to me, I don't even understand why they had to go to the replay. You could clearly see it, whether you were on the field watching the sky cam, whatever. Mike White is standing in the end zone with the football. And don't understand what the referees were watching there, but hey, that's NFL officials for you these days. But that would, I've only seen it once in my life where a team has won a game on just hitting field goals. That was that Steelers-Bengals playoff game 6-7 years ago with the Vontaze Burfict hit on Antonio Brown that pretty much screwed up the rest of his life as we know it. And Pac-Man Jones getting thrown out of the game for contact with an official there. Other than that, you're not going to win games solely on field goals alone. And what bothered me here with the red zone offense is why they were seemingly getting away from the ground game. Because who knew that this kid, Bam Knight, was going to become such a important part of this offense, especially after the injuries to Breece Hall and whatever Michael Carter is going through right now, causing him to miss yesterday's game. They've uncovered an undrafted rookie here in Zonovan Knight that has added a little spark, added a little flavor to this offense in their ground game each of these last 2 weeks, almost making the James Robinson trade feel like a waste of time with how this kid is playing. But you have Mike White, who played well for the most part. I mean, if you went just by the stats alone and judging him on the 2 interceptions, I feel bad for you, because you clearly missed a guy that gave a lot of heart, a lot of grit out there to keep this team competitive. And having him throw 57 times, I don't think exactly was in the game plan. I thought they got away from the run a little too much, especially with Knight averaging 6 yards per carry. Sort of really tried to jam it down Minnesota's throat, especially with how Minnesota had 2 long drives early in this game. Give your defense a little bit of a break. That this offense sitting out there while Minnesota's driving down the field for 2 12-yard or 12-play drives early in this game, the offense is getting iced. The defense is tiring out. Give your defense a little bit of a break and allow there to be multi-dimensions in this offense. A lot of why they were able to get so many red zone opportunities in the second half is because White had to take chances down the field. Wasn't just nickeling and diming them the whole time, had to take some chances. And some of those chances, you just look back and wonder what could have been. What could have been if Garrett Wilson didn't step out of bounds? You're talking about a 2019 game, maybe even a 2020 game if they go for the 2-point conversion there. Or 5 minutes ago, you're down by 5. And on first down, Mike White barely overthrows Garrett Wilson. Just by that much. And we're talking about Garrett Wilson running in for a go-ahead score. And with the way the Jet defense played in that fourth quarter, that might have been enough there. And even after that, you still had opportunities. The fourth down pass to Corey Davis in between 3 defenders that if Hicks doesn't, shoestring tackle him there, we're talking about a go-ahead touchdown with about 3 minutes to go. Late in that drive, you have Berrios drop a should-be touchdown on fourth down in the end zone that proved to be a killer. I mean, there were just too many what-ifs in this game for your liking. So while you're happy that this team has fight while they're playing competitive football here in the month of December, have a chance to go to the postseason for the first time in years, you're disappointed with yesterday's loss. There's no other way around it. But the one thing you walk away from yesterday's loss telling yourself is, no matter what Robert Saleh says to the media later today, what he says when he does his Monday afternoon weekly radio spot, Mike White has to remain the quarterback of this team for the remainder of the season. Unless there's an injury, there's no other reason to play anybody else at quarterback. He's looked the best with this Mike LaFleur offense. He's ran it better than Joe Flacco. Hell, miles and miles better than Zach Wilson, who didn't sit there with a sour puss on his face on the sidelines, actually looked engaged and involved this week. And this team just seems to have an infection and a natural camaraderie with this guy, that there's something about him, not just his play on the field, just something about him as a person that lifts this team up. And I'm not saying he's the long-term answer, but for this year, Mike White, unless proven completely wrong, unless he gets knocked out of the game against Buffalo this coming Sunday, or there's some other unforeseen injury, he's got to be the guy. He gives the Jets their best chance of ending a decade-long playoff drought. And I don't want the Jets to be relying on looking at the scoreboard every week when it comes to hopefully making the playoffs. I don't want to be sitting there rooting for other teams to help us out. I'm sitting there during the 4 o'clock window rooting hard for Derek Carr and the Raiders to hold on to their 2-touchdown lead late in the game against the Chargers. And working their way back after some early miscues, only for the Chargers to have their typical second half chargering. I don't want to be sitting there as great of a game as Bengals Chiefs was, and now Joe Burrow has some kind of ownership over Patrick Mahomes that the Chiefs are sitting there scratching their head, wondering, how is it we can't beat this guy? We're supposed to be, the Michael Jordan Bulls or the Tom Brady Patriots of this era, and we just can't beat Joe Burrow. He's beat us 3 times in a year, and this is coming off of them not having Jamar Chase for about a month. I don't want to be sitting there leaving my hopes and prayers up to someone else. I want the Jets to get the job done themselves. It will feel more meaningful that way. I mean, I'll take getting in the playoffs any way I can, but Jets winning games in their own right will feel more meaningful. And, yesterday, I talk about it being a missed opportunity, not just with the red zone opportunities, but you look at what went on in the division. The Dolphins lose in San Francisco to the 49ers, and I'll get more into that game in a few minutes. And then you've got this coming Sunday against the Buffalo Bills, where if the Jets win that game and sweep the season series, they would have the tiebreaker. But the Bills, after their win and beatdown win on the Patriots last Thursday night, running the ball right down their throat, their win combined with the Jets' loss now puts the Jets 2 games behind the Bills when it comes to possibly winning the division. But hey, it's still right there ahead of the New York Jets. It's still right there in front of them for them to be a playoff team this year. And hopefully they stick with Mike White for the remainder of this season so they don't waste the opportunity that is ahead of them. All right, going to take another break here, but come back on the other side and look at some of the things that went on in the NFC this weekend, as well as a couple of quarterback injuries that could change the trajectory of the entire NFL playoffs. Continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
More times than not, there is some piece of breaking news that will take place during the podcast while I'm recording the podcast. Well, I'll be saying, damn it, I wish I would have known that before I got started so that I could talk about it and didn't have to wait until the following week to discuss it or give some reaction to. Well, that's not the case this week because breaking news, according to SMY's Andy Martino, the New York Mets are in agreement with the reigning AL Cy Young winner, Justin Verlander, on a 2-year, $86 million contract with a vesting option for a 3rd year. And listen, while the guy is 40 years old, he's a year or 2 years removed from Tommy John surgery. This was a must-have move for the New York Mets. You could not just sit around and wait and hope for something good to happen after losing Jacob deGrom. This is a move that is about the now. It's showing that, yeah, Verlander, he's got some mileage on him. He's 40 years old, and we can't expect him to go out there and make 35 starts and pitch, 235 innings anymore. But somewhere between that 27 to maybe even 31 starts mark, maybe that's being too much. That's what we need out of this guy. That's what we need for him to give us. Pair with Max Scherzer and have a 2-headed monster at the top of our rotation to go into this season with. So that is a very good move for the New York Mets. Had to come away with a big-time pitcher here. And now their offseason can truly begin here. So if you're a Met fan, you're still disappointed over losing Jacob deGrom, but this should take away a little bit of a sting from it. Replacing a former multi-time Cy Young winner with a former multi-time American League Cy Young and MVP winner and future Hall of Famer in his own right. And this year showed us Justin Verlander still has plenty left in the tank. Plus, on a positive note for all of us, who are we going to get to see on SNY at a lot of these games now? Think about it. That's right. The gorgeous Kate Upton will be front row at a lot of Justin Verlander's starts at Citi Field. So that's always a positive thing. Okay, now let's get back to the real sports here, or the real sports conversation, because, we talked about the AFC before and how it was missed opportunity for the Jets. Well, opportunity, I feel, has been opened for teams in the NFC. Well, you still have the Eagles at the top. They still are the likeliest team to be having home field advantage throughout the NFC portion of the postseason. I have felt for the last couple of weeks now that their biggest challenger, the biggest struggle for them in the postseason could be potentially the San Francisco 49ers. Because the 49ers have all of the ingredients you need to win a Super Bowl. You have a great ground game, now led by Christian McCaffrey, a ferocious defense that on all three levels is just a pain in the ass to deal with, especially with Nick Bosa there. Essentially an unstoppable monster. And he let Tua know that yesterday. And a quarterback that will not make mistakes, will not be the reason that you win the game, but in all likelihood will not be the reason why you lose the game. But now you've lost a piece of that ingredient. And not just as a sports fan, but as a person, I feel bad for Jimmy Garoppolo because it feels like he can never catch a break here. He can never have just a moment to be truly happy. Whether it be sitting behind Tom Brady for a while, then he gets traded to the 49ers. There's some injuries before they get to a Super Bowl, and they let up a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter of that Super Bowl. Now you've had for the last couple of years them trying to replace him. Kyle Shanahan almost looking to throw him right out the door for Trey Lance. There was nowhere for him to go. He comes back as the backup. Trey Lance gets hurt, and he's leading this team on this really good run here, looking like one of the top teams in not just the NFC, but in all of the NFL. And first drive of the game yesterday, he leaves with a broken foot, season over. So now enters Brock Purdy, last year's Mr. Irrelevant in the NFL draft. And I don't think this is going to be as easy as, just don't go out there and make any mistakes, kid. Let the ground game and the defense carry the way, like I've seen most people on TV talk about this morning. Because while we all agree, Jimmy Garoppolo was not the sole focus, the leading reason behind them winning games. He was probably fourth on the list, behind the ground game, behind Kyle Shanahan, behind that, especially that defense. You've seen over the last several years in the Jimmy Garoppolo era, this team plays at its best with him out there. They're winning like 2/3 of his games or the games that they play with him out there, and only winning about 30% of the games when he's not out there. I mean, you look at the numbers. They average 27 points a game and have a 38-17 record with him. He's thrown for 80 touchdowns and only 42 interceptions over the course of those games. While anybody else you put out there, whether it be injury or trying to replace him with Trey Lance, they've struggled. They score about 7 less points per game, have about a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, and have only won 30% of those games without Jimmy Garoppolo in the starting lineup. And there's a reason why a guy like Brock Purdy went all the way until the final pick of the NFL draft before being selected. So people think that, oh, it's just this simple thing, plug and play. No, you look at these guys like what Taylor Heineke's doing in Washington, and they battled back to tie the Giants yesterday. Or you look at what Mike White is currently doing with the Jets. These guys who were late round draft picks, they weren't just thrown out there to the wolves and said, oh, go get him, kid. They sat there and watched for a while, learned from people ahead of them, learned how to do it, learned how to fit into their offensive schemes the right way. And then when the opportunity was given to them, they went out there and they performed. And because they were good guys about it, because they won over the locker room, it uplifted the team. Brock Purdy probably hasn't been around taking reps with the top guys as much as you would think. And if they were, truly committed to him, then why are they bringing in Josh Johnson off the free agent wire? So to me, this is a very tenuous situation here for the 49ers. And if you're a 49ers fan today, you really should be, sitting on your hands, praying that Purdy can just be plug and play and not screw things up, because you had a really good thing going. You had the team that looked like it was the best shot to slow down the Philadelphia Eagles. And that right now is all you can hope for, is slowing down the Eagles. Each week the Eagles are showing they can find a different way to beat you. Whether it's last week and running for almost 400 yards against Rodgers and the Packers, or yesterday just putting on a clinic against that Titans secondary, and A.J. Brown having a field day while taunting the Titans all day. They have so many ways to beat you, mixing in a quarterback that is developing right before our eyes in Jalen Hurts, who can throw for 400 yards, or have a $150 on the ground and run for a couple of touchdowns if the air attack is not working that night. And they're not, unless I've missed something, they're not missing anybody on that offense. They haven't had that, devastating injury that seems to hit every team along the way, whether it be with the Niners and now losing a second quarterback during this season, or the Cowboys, who have been without Tyrone Smith on that offense, dealt with a month without Dak Prescott. The Buccaneers having injuries on their offensive line. The Packers and the mess that they've been all year long. The Giants essentially running out practice squad guys now to fill out a hopefully somewhat competitive offense. Now, the Eagles haven't dealt like that. So it feels like right now you're looking at the NFC and wondering, who is it? Who could be that team that does this? Could it be the Cowboys after last night's shellacking of the Colts? And you want to give the Colts credit for being competitive, being cute there for a little bit. But I think the magic carpet ride for this Jeff Saturday experiment has finally ran out. It was cute the first week. You went out there and got a victory. But each of the last couple of weeks, the losses have been getting worse and worse. And now last night, giving up 33 in the fourth quarter, having 4 consecutive drives end with a turnover, including one of your former players, Malik Hooker, recovering a fumble for a touchdown. And Matt Ryan, every time he dropped back last night, was getting hit in that fourth quarter. And now the Cowboys, have figured out the right mix as far as their ground game is concerned and how much Dak Prescott throws the football. That's why maybe I'm the contrarian here. I'm almost in the mindset right now of I wouldn't bring in Odell Beckham Jr. As great as he is, I would be worried about ruining the mix here, ruining the good vibe that you have on this offense. I know there's always the thought you can never have too many good players, but this might be an occasion where you do have too many chefs in the kitchen. And listen, Odell's grown up. He's more mature than he was when he first left the Giants and went to the Cleveland Browns. But who knows how he's going to accept essentially being the number 3 guy on the Dallas Cowboys. To me, he'd almost be better off going to either the Giants or going to the Baltimore Ravens, who now need and could use all the help they can get with who knows how long this injury that Lamar Jackson has. They say it's day to day or a day to week. But remember, it was around this time last year he got hurt, missed the rest of the season, and they fell completely out of it. They were 8-4 this time last year and fell apart with Lamar's injury. They're now 8-4 once again after barely squeaking by the Denver Broncos yesterday. They could surely use some offensive help, some offensive support, because their offense, they're lucky they've played the Broncos and Panthers each of the last 2 weeks, because their offense has not impressed anybody one bit. As far as the Giants and the Commanders go yesterday, with them finishing in that 20-all tie, that could turn out to be a saving grace for both of these teams. Because you're starting to see some of these teams that are in the bottom, that are in the hunt, like a Detroit Lions, that are starting to surge up a bit. That tie could prevent you from having the same amount of losses as them at the end of the season. And in the case of the Giants, who lost to Detroit a couple of weeks ago, that could very much come in handy there. And you're not exactly sure how you're walking out of MetLife Stadium feeling yesterday, but when you stop and think about it, the tie might not be the worst thing in the world. And we'll see how you rebound from that with division opponents coming up each of the next 2 weeks. All right, going to take one last break, come back on the other side, and close things out for this week. Continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
Once again, the breaking news of the day is the Mets have signed Justin Verlander to a 2-year, $86 million contract with a third-year vesting option. That news coming via SMY's Andy Martino. Hopefully, with the winter meetings getting started last night, we'll have a lot more news to talk about with both the Mets and the Yankees in next week's podcast. I typically don't talk about things that I see on social media on the podcast here, but I'm sure most of you guys have seen the Steph Curry video from over the weekend, where it's right after a practice or right after, I guess, some photo shoot that he took part in, and he starts chucking basketballs full court down toward the other hoop like they're a football, and drained each one of them. Didn't even bang them off the backboard. And I'm still trying to decide myself, is this real or is this fake? I mean, listen, we're talking about the greatest shooter of all time, so I wouldn't put anything past him. But to make 5 consecutive shots like that, full court, throwing the basketball like it's a football, it was just insane watching that. Now, what's also insane, and this is something that I don't think gets talked about as much, is what Spencer Dinwiddie brought up a couple of days ago, saying that NBA official Tony Brothers was forced to sit out a game assignment after he called him a bleep-ass mother you-know-what on the court during a game. Now, you can fill in the blanks there on what I really said there. But this was not considered a suspension without pay. The NBA didn't put out any press release or announce any punishment. I gotta be honest, as a fan, I like full transparency in sports. We hold the athletes, we hold the coaches, we hold front office executives to a level of accountability. Why don't we do that with the officials, huh? Why do we not do that with them? Why is it that, when a coach gets out of line and gets ejected, we hear about their fine or their suspension? Same with a player. Or there's some kind of allegation against an organization, there's a fine or suspension toward a front office member, like in the case of the Houston Astros cheating scandal. But whenever there's something going on involving an official in any sport, unless it's to the level of the Tim Donaghy gambling scandal, why don't we ever hear about this stuff? Why don't we ever hear about punishments for the referees? They like to act like they're the third team out there anyway. They like to act like they're part of this. Why do we protect them? Why do we pander to them? Why do we kiss their ass and not announce when they do something stupid? Excuse me. Why is it they get that free pass that these players and coaches and front office people are not afforded? This should have been streamed across the bottom line on ESPN, Fox Sports 1, any of these sports channels. And instead, we got to hear about this from Spencer Dinwiddie on his social media account or on a podcast somewhere. All right? Not just to the NBA, to all of professional sports. Do better. Hold your officials to an accountability that we hold everybody to. They do not deserve a free pass. We're beyond the point where officials should just get their rear ends kissed when it comes to them getting punished for doing or saying something stupid. Now, I didn't talk about this last week, and I apologize for not getting to this, because this can be considered a sensitive subject. To me, is a serious subject. It split my mind and was something I should have talked about last week. But what has gotten some attention in the last 2 weeks is the photo that was released or published by the Washington Post of Jerry Jones. This photo was taken back in 1957 when Jerry Jones was only 14, 15 years old. It shows him as a teenager standing with a group of white classmates at his school in Arkansas in what looks like the white classmates preventing 6 black students from entering the school. Now, to be fair, we don't know what Jerry Jones's intentions are in this photo, because he's not one of the aggressors in the front. He's not, you could see who's the aggressors here. You could see in this photo who's standing out front and blocking. Jerry Jones is kind of almost in the background amongst the white teenagers. And you're not truly sure what his intentions here were as a sophomore at North Little Rock High School. And he has come out and said since then, since this article was published, because the main reason that this photo came to light is an article was published emphasizing Jerry Jones' failure to hire a black coach amongst his years as the owner, CEO, and president of the Dallas Cowboys, and talking about the NFL's failure to promote black coaches over the years. And Jerry Jones's response to this photo was, quote, "I don't know that I or anybody anticipated or had a background of knowing what was involved. It was more of a curiosity thing." Since then, it feels like that story kind of faded, and LeBron James was wondering why. I want you guys to hear these quotes that he said last week during his post-game press conference after playing the Portland Trailblazers.
I was wondering why I haven't gotten a question from you guys about the Jerry Jones photo. But when the Kyrie thing was going on, you guys were quick to ask us questions about that.
Okay.
Hold on. And I don't even want you guys to say nothing. When I watched Kyrie talk and he says, "I know who I am, but I want to keep the same energy when we're talking about my people and the things that we've been through." And that Jerry Jones photo is one of those moments that our people, black people, have been through in America. And I feel like, as a black man, as a black athlete, as someone with power and a platform, when we do something wrong or something that people don't agree with, it's on every single tabloid, every single news coverage. It's on the bottom ticker. It's asked about every single day. But it seems like to me that the whole Jerry Jones situation photo, and I know it was years and years ago and we all make mistakes, I get it. But it seemed like it's just been buried under like, oh, it happened. Okay, we just move on. And I was just kind of disappointed that I haven't received that question from you guys.
He's right and he's wrong both at the same time. He's right in the fact that there has not been the same outrage. There's not been the same, everyday commentary on this as Kyrie. And maybe it's because what Kyrie has done and said, not just with the sharing of that promotion for the documentary recently, but what he did when it came to vaccination, or when he left the team at the Nets after the January 6th Capitol attacks. Maybe because it's going on in present day, and every day there seems to be something else with Kyrie that he makes the narrative surrounding him look worse and worse. Maybe that's the one reason why we have been so much on that and made that an everyday story, compared to a photo of Jerry Jones from when he was a teenager that was 65 years ago. And we like to believe that as a society, we've evolved past that point of the way things were with segregation back in that day. But clearly, unfortunately, racism still does exist in this country. And I'm not sure if we're not given the same veracity, same attention to the Jerry Jones situation versus the Kyrie situation based on race. I can't sit here and tell you that. I can't sit here and tell you that. But I can sit here and tell you that I can't get in the head of a black man, woman, child, and tell them how to feel. I can only sit here, listen to them, and educate myself based on the things they say, based on how they feel and how they feel there's not an equal treatment on things. But here's where LeBron is wrong about this. If you have thoughts, opinions about the Jerry Jones situation, which, he didn't go into full context on that. I mean, because he probably could have done an hour-long press conference talking about his opinion on that, which has every right to say, has every right to be out there with, because it's not like as I said before, it's not like when these guys give opinions on real life stuff, real world stuff, whether it be politics, whether it be, in this case, social justice issues. It's not like they're stopping the games and bringing a podium out in the middle of the field or court to do so. They're doing it either pre-games, when talking to a member of the media, or post-game. They handle their business on the field, and then when they get back to being the real them, the real person rather than the athlete, then they use the platform that has been provided to them to express those opinions. And that's why so many people who disagree with their opinions have a problem with them. It's because, they don't have that platform to yell and scream about it. But if you're LeBron, why are you waiting to be asked about it? If you have those opinions, just come up right out and say it. No, rather than going into the whole diatribe at your press conference asking, hey, I was wondering why you guys haven't asked me a question. Why did you wait until 10 days after the fact, as the story, like you said, started to fade away and not gotten the same attention as Kyrie and everything with him? Right when it happens, first post-game press conference, as long as it's not some kind of debilitating loss for the Lakers, come right out and say, hey guys, can I have a couple of minutes here to talk about something that's more important than the game? I want to get this out there. I got some thoughts about this. Why wait? Why wait to be asked? Now like I said, LeBron is such a confounding figure because he's a great man, great player, but at times, he can take stories and make them what they're not supposed to be. Don't wait for us to ask. You're probably as powerful or the most powerful athlete in all of sports. You've always had this platform in front of you for the last 21 years. Use it. And tell us what you're thinking. Don't wait to be asked about it, because that's when people are going to rip and criticize you. And finally, yesterday, the college football playoff was announced. On Saturday, December 31st, we're going to have number 2 Michigan versus number 3 TCU in the Fiesta Bowl at 4 p.m. And then at 8 o'clock, it will be number 1 Georgia against number 4 Ohio State in the Peach Bowl, with the winners meeting up at SoFi Stadium on Monday, January 9th to decide the national champion. And, this time last week I was saying, would there be any chaos? Would there be any unexpectedness? Because you had Georgia, TCU, Michigan, and USC all playing in conference championship games. Well, Georgia and Michigan held serve. They did what they were supposed to do. And they were pretty much locks no matter what happened, even if they had fallen in their respective conference title games. But the question was going to become, what if TCU or USC lost? Well, USC added some chaos to this with their blowout loss to Utah on Friday night. And the big thing here is, Caleb Williams, give the kid a lot of credit. He was playing the second half of this game on one leg, but the USC could not make a tackle to save their life after the first quarter. And Cam Rising played a pretty good game, but the Utah ground game just ran all over the USC. And you're watching missed tackle after missed tackle. You've seen Utah out there, making these 50, 60-yard touchdown runs and catches. And it was like you were playing a college football video game with how they were avoiding these tackles left and right as that game went on. And although they played some good teams on their schedule, you knew with Ohio State at 5 breathing down their neck, even with them not playing, with the wins that they had already in their back pocket against Notre Dame and Penn State, if USC even slightly slipped up, that they were going to be out of the mix, because losing the Pac-12 championship game will not give you as much of a free pass as, say, losing in the SEC championship game or the Big Ten championship game. And with USC already having one loss on their mark, having a second loss killed any chance of them being in the playoff. Now, TCU, on the other hand, yes, they lost to Kansas State, and they were sloppy as hell in the first half of this game. You had Quentin Johnston with the fumble at a time where they could have gone in for a game-tying score. Duggan throws an interception in the red zone that kind of set them back there early in the fourth quarter, and they just had to scramble for forcing overtime here before there was stuff at the goal line on their initial drive, and then lost on a walk-off field goal to K-State. But at least, A, they weren't blown out here, and B, they lost to a team that was in the top 15 of the rankings. Kansas State, in yesterday's most recent rankings, was put at number 10. It's not like they were an unranked team with 5 losses or a team that is out of some minor conference. This is a pretty good team that they lost to by a field goal in overtime. And you look at TCU's schedule this year. They beat 5 teams that were all ranked in the top 20 at the time that they played them. They blew out Oklahoma earlier this year. They went to Kansas and won by a touchdown. Won in double OT against Oklahoma State. They had already beat K-State earlier this year. And beat Texas in Texas at a time where Texas was surging and looking like maybe they can make a late run for the Big 12 championship game. And listen, I know there's the Alabama fans sitting there crying today, bitching and moaning, saying, what about us? What about us? You know why I know they're doing that? Because your boy, Nick Saban, was on every television station, every halftime show that would listen to him over the weekend, politicking and campaigning to get Alabama in the playoff. Well, look at Alabama. They had no impressive wins this year. Their wins against Arkansas and Ole Miss lost value as the season went along. Those teams fell apart. They had a 1-point win against Texas in a game in which Texas was playing a backup quarterback. And they lost to 2 teams in Tennessee and LSU, including LSU that beat them on their home field, and LSU went to the SEC title game and got whacked around by Georgia. They didn't have the impressive wins on the table like a TCU did, or Ohio State in beating Notre Dame in the first week and then going to Penn State and beating up on them in October. Sorry, Nick. All right. The sport's not about kissing your ass. All right. We can go on with having the college football playoff without you guys for once. The world's going to keep spinning. The sun's going to keep hopefully coming up every single morning, and life is going to be okay, even if Alabama is not playing in the college football playoff. You're just going to have to deal with it and hopefully do better next year. And that, my friends, was Keeping It Sports with M3 for Tuesday, December 6th, 2022. Everyone, please have a great night. Have a fun, safe, happy, healthy week. Stay safe in whatever you may be doing. And I'll talk to you guys again, same time next week. Until then, peace.
We have to go. Good night, everybody.
I have had enough of you!
Thank you for all the fun. Thank you. Hey, shut up, will ya?
I don't want to see you, I don't want to hear you, and I don't want to smell you. Now leave. I'll be back.